Hey, Shalom Israel. First and foremost, we give all glory, all honor, all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashah, Yahweh Shah, to the Hope of Israel. This is your brother Shema Shawan, come back with another lesson. And this lesson is regarding the Tower of Babel, found in Genesis chapter 11, right? So let's get it. So Genesis 11:1, it says, and the whole world was of one language and of one speech. So we need to take a look at this word language, right, and see exactly what it's talking about, right? So when you look at um, the word language here, let's get it in the blue letter.
Strong's H 8193. Safa. Safa.
All right, so it should be sapa. So when we go down to the outline of biblical usage, we're going to see lip, language, speech, shore, bank, bring. Right. So what we're looking at is what is applicable to our study, which is the language or speech here. Right. So we understand, that the proto languages, or proto is first, or the paleo, ancient languages. Okay. So these are ancient and proto languages that Adam spoke. Okay. So um, let's go and continue the lesson, if Yahweh say the same. Let's go over to Genesis chapter 2 and get some insight on this language or speech, proto, first language that was spoken by Adam, our forefather. So let's go to understand exactly, what these languages were, because they're going to give us some information about these languages, right, and the meaning of these languages, and it's going to really, give us an example of what language it was. So let's go to Genesis chapter 2:7. It says, and Yahweh power formed man out of the dust of the ground, right? And breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. So we need this word ground here, right? So this is what, we all come from, right? Right. So let's get it. Let's go and get the understanding on ground here. Let's go to the blue letter and get it. Here it is here.
Strong's H 127. Adamah. Adamah.
Adamah. So that's actually Adam's name. So Yahweh names Adam after the substance or the ground, right? So we go to the outline of biblical usage. It's going to be ground, land, ground, right? Ground, right? Exactly. So we see that we can kind of understand exactly, you know, uh, the Hebrew aspect, because remember the word Hebrew comes way after, and we'll see that that the word Hebrew is going to derive from the our forefather Eber, but that's down in the lesson a little bit. So we see, these words, or these so-called proto words, or these paleo words, or this paleo language. Okay, so we see Adamah, which is Adam, which means ground. Now let's take a look at Eve and see what her name means, right? In the Hebrew that comes a little later in terms of the naming of it, or the term Hebrew. Let's go to Genesis chapter 3, and we're going to pick it up at verse 20. And you're going to see her name is going to literally come from the understanding of the precept. Watch. So this is Genesis chapter 3 and 20. It says, and Adam called his wife named Eve, because she was the mother of all living. So this is the name, or the meaning of her name, living, or life. Okay, Eve. And we're going to see that, that wasn't her actual name. in the actual enunciation of it, right? So let's go and get it at the blue letter. Here it is.
Strong's H 2332. Cheva. Cheva.
Okay. So when you go down to the outline of biblical usage, it's going to be, see, life and living. And the reason why we're establishing the language is because we'll understand, if you Howard said the same, once we get over to the Tower of Babel, what's that, what that is talking about in terms of what language the people were speaking. Okay, so we have to go through this, and put on our spiritual investigative eyes to understand exactly, what this means. Okay, so we see that these are Hebrew cognates, right, in terms of Adam, which means ground, and then Eve, which means life or living. Okay, so when we go to the etymology of words, and you guys can go over to the etymology online, it's free, right? And we'll get the understanding of the etymology of the word Adam. And watch this, right? So we go to the etymology of the word Adam, right? Get it, right? So it says proper name, the biblical name of the first man, progenitor of the human race. From Hebrew, Adam, man, literally, the one formed from the ground. Hebrew, Adamah, right? Or ground. So, or either earth, ground, or soil. Okay, so we see, the correlation in terms of why Yahweh names Adam, right? His name, right? In terms of him coming from the earth, of the ground, of the soil. Now, let's go and get Eve. Because her name, and we'll see it if Yahweh say the same, her actual name is going to look something like this. Okay. So Eve, when we go back to the etymology online, right? Eve, proper name, biblical first woman, right? From Hebrew, Semitic, right, which comes from Shem. Hawa or Kawa, literally a living being. From base, Hawa, he lived, right? Aramaic, Hayin, something like that. All right. So we see, we're trying to make the correlation in terms of what language our forefathers were speaking, right? The proto first language, paleo ancient language, so we can understand when we get over to the Genesis chapter 11 and understand the context of that. Okay. So now, when we see this, so now remember, let's go to second aspect, because understand, if Adam is the first man, that he's going to instruct the people in terms of what language, right, or what dialect they're going to speak, right? He's the first man. So let's go to second Esdras 6, and we're going to pick it up at verse 53. Here it is. It says, upon the sixth day thou gavest command upon the earth, that before thee it should bring forth beasts, cattle, and creepy things. This is exactly what happened the second day, on the sixth day. It says, and after these Adam also, whom thou madest Lord over all thy creatures. So this is when Adam is naming the creatures, right? In terms of the verbiage or the language that he's speaking, right? Of him come we all, and the people also whom thou hast chosen, which is Yasharala, us, Israel. So we see that Adam is going to instruct the people in terms of what language or dialect they're going to speak, okay? So now, let's go and understand. If you would say the same, we had to lay the foundation, so we can build up with the spiritual understanding, okay? So now let's go over to Genesis chapter 5, because now we have to bring in something, if you would say the same. So this is Genesis 5:30. It says, and Lamech lived after he begat Noah. So now we got Noah in here, right? 500 90 and 5 years, and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Lamech were 770 and 7 years, and he died. And Noah was 500 years old, and Noah begat Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So we had to make this correlation in terms of these men, these four men, right? These four progenitors. That's going to give way to the population of the earth after the flood, right? So we have to understand, this is prior to the flood. So this is pre-flood here, right? Pre-flood, understanding exactly what the people, what the language was, the consistent language, was this proto-language, right? That, was named a little later Hebrew, okay, or Aramaic, those two languages. So we had to go there. So now this is pre-flood, as I mentioned. Now let's go over to Genesis 6, and we're going to pick it up at verse 17. It says, "And behold, even I, do bring a flood of waters upon the earth to destroy all flesh." See, all flesh, wherein is the breath of life from under heaven, and everything that is in the earth shall die. So everybody died, right? The animals, everybody died, right? There was no human left, and it's all kind of crazy stories in terms of, how people survived and all that stuff. We're not going to get into that, all that foolishness, right? We're going to stay with the facts, what the scripture is presenting us, okay? 18, it says, "But with thee will I establish my covenant," talking about Noah, "and thou shalt come into the ark, thou and thy sons and thy wife and thy sons' wives with you." So we're going to see it's going to be 8 souls, right? That Yahweh is going to save. And so after the flood, they're going to repopulate. And so now whatever language Noah is speaking, right? Because remember, when you go through the bloodline of Noah, right, from Adam, which is found in Genesis chapter 5, you're going to see it all come down. It's going to all correlate right down to Adam in terms of what language that they were speaking, okay? So now we understand that, right? So we understand that we got 8 souls here. So now let's get some more precepts here to get the proper understanding on this. Let's go over to 1 Peter 3. Let's go to 1 Peter 3, right, and validate this. This is 1 Peter 3 and 20 says, "Which sometimes were disobedient, which when once the long-suffering of Yahweh waited in the days of Noah," right? It's talking about the flood, while the ark was preparing, wherein few, that is 8 souls, were saved by water. So we see the 8 souls, Noah, his 3 sons, and their wives, right? Right. So now we can conclude, we can righteously conclude through the scriptures that these people were speaking this proto-language that was given them by Yahweh, by Hashem, which Adam gave to the people. We read that in 2nd Esdras as he commanded the people, right? And so now we can understand exactly what language it is. So now let's go to Genesis chapter 10 and see what it is, right? Let's go to Genesis chapter 10. From the top it says, "Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and unto them were sons born after the flood." So now we're after the flood now. This is after the flood, and so Yahweh is going to establish humanity, right, on the earth. And we're going to see what language these people were speaking. So now let's go down to verse 21. Shem, right, is where the word Shemitic comes from Shem here. Genesis 10:21, it says, "Unto Shem also the father of all the children of Eber." It comes out of Eber, right? This is where the word Hebrew derived from. This brother right here, Eber, right? Let's get it. Let's get it. Here it is here.
Strong's H 5677. Aver.
Okay, there it is. So we go down to the outline of biblical usage. See, Eber or Heber, which means the region beyond. And we're going to see that this Eber is going to derive into the word Hebrew, okay? So now, let's go and get it here. let's go back to the etymology of words here. When we type this brother in, Eber, let's type this brother in, Eber. Let's type him in and see something here, right? Yep, exactly. Yep, Eber. So on the outline, etymology of words, when you type in the word Eber, it comes up Hebrew, right? This is what it is. It says traditionally from an ancestral name Eber, but probably literal, one from the other side, perhaps in reference to the river Euphrates. We don't need all of that, right? But we see where this word Hebrew is derived from this brother Eber here, okay? Which is a Shemitic, which comes out of Shem, right? And we're going to also see another language which is familiar to our language, which is this brother here, right? Let's go back to Genesis chapter 10, and we're going to pick it up at verse, where's this brother at? We're going to pick it up at verse 22. Right, it says the children of Shem, Elam, and Ashur, and Aphexad, and Lud, and Aram. This brother Aram, this is where the language Aramaic comes from, right? Arabic, that's some garbage. That Arabic they speak now, that's a fusion language. The original language was Aramaic. That's the original language. So we see these two languages deriving from these people here, right? Right. So when we go and get this brother here, Aram, here he is here.
Strong's H758, Aram. Aram.
Okay.
And the form just below that, Aram. Aram.
Okay. When we go down to the outline of biblical usage, see it, it's going to say Aram or Armenian, something like that. Armenians. So this is the language that the Syrians spoke. Okay, but we're going to see something right here. So we go back to the outline or the etymology of words. Right. We're going to see something with this Aram or this Armenian, Aramians, whatever that is. Psych about that. This is not our language, no way. I don't give a hoot about trying to pronounce this stuff correctly. Psych about that. How I know I'm doing the best I can, right? So we're just trying to bring up the sense and the understanding on this. So we go to the etymology online to look at this dude, Aram. Watch this. We're going to see it again. It's going to add up. Aram here. Yep, see it? It comes right. The same word that we saw earlier, Aramean, Aramaean. It's the same thing, Israel. See it? Yep, see it, right. Aramaic. Yep, it's Aramaic, right? This is where Aramaic comes from, right? It's a Semitic language, right? Spoken by the Assyrians spoke this, right? And we see that language, or the Aramaic, derived from that brother. So now we trying to establish and understand the languages, so when we get over to the Tower of Babel, we'll have clear understanding, okay? So now we understand the proto-languages, right? Or the first languages, right, that was spoken prior to the flood. And so now Noah and his posterity are going to bring these languages forth. And so now let's go over to Genesis chapter 11, and we can dive in if Yahweh said the same, right? Let's go back to Genesis chapter 11 and 1. It says, and the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. Now remember, this is after the flood. People, they don't, you gotta understand this. This is after the flood, right? We gotta consider this. It says, and it came to pass as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said one to another, Go to, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar. And they said, Go to, let us build us a city and a tower whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered. This word scattered, right? Abroad, and we'll address it a little later. Lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men builded. And the Lord said, Behold, the people are one, and they have all one language. It was all one language, right? And this they do, and this they began to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. That's exactly right. Go to, let us go down, and there confound the languages. So, mix the languages, right? Create these different dialects of languages, right? That they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad. This word scattered again, abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city, right? Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because Yahweh did there confuse the language of all the earth, and from thence did Yahweh scatter them abroad upon the face of all the earth. So the problem with this is, right, when people look, even myself included, right, when we look at verses 7 and 8, right, when Yahweh confounds these speeches and scatters them, we think that was instantaneously. It wasn't. It was not spontaneous, right? It was not, instantaneous when Yahweh did this. It was over a matter of time. This is why we saw the word scatter, multiple times, right? And so let's show an instance when we read in the scriptures and we assume it happens, just immediately. Okay, let's get an instance here, okay? Let's use Moses for an example. Let's go to Exodus chapter 2. Let's go to Exodus chapter 2, and we're going to look at verse 11 and 12. Watch this. It says, And it came to pass in those days when Moses was grown, that he went out to his brethren and looked on their burdens, and he spied an Egyptian smiting a Hebrew, one of his brethren. And he looked this way and that way, and when he saw that there was no man, he slew the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. So we're going to understand that Moses was 40 years old here, right? So, we can kind of, we would assume, that, once Moses does this, then, Yahweh sends him in to speak to Pharaoh to bring us out of Egypt. No. We're going to see that right here, right, Moses is 40 years old. He's 40 years old, right? Let's prove it. Let's go to Acts chapter 7. This did not happen, instantly. It took over 40 years for this to happen, and we're going to see. That we're making the same parallel to the Tower of Babel. It didn't happen immediate like that, as we assume. Okay, so now let's go to Acts 7 and 23. It says, and when he was 40 years old, see that? Moses was 40 years old then, right? It came into his heart to visit his brethren, the children of Israel, and seeing one of them suffer wrong, he defended him. We just read that over in Exodus chapter 2, right? And avenged him that was oppressed and smote the Egyptian. We just read that. So Moses was 40 years old then, right? He was 40 years old, and Yahweh made it an additional 40 years before Moses came and, rescued us out of Egypt. Let's get it. Let's go to Exodus chapter 3, right? So let's go to the instance when Yahweh is going to send Moses. Moses is going to be 80 years old then, right? So this is Exodus 3. From the top it says, now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the backside of the desert and came to the mountain of Yahweh, even to Horeb. See that? And the angel of Yahweh appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of the bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, but the bush was not consumed. So this is 80 or 40 years later from what we just read when Moses smote the Egyptian. This took time, right? Let's get it. Let's go over. Watch. Let's stay in Exodus. Let's go to the very next chapter, Exodus chapter 4. Slacky. Let's go to Exodus chapter 7. Slacky about that. Let's go to Exodus chapter 7 and see, what it is, what's, really going on here, right? Okay, so this is Exodus chapter 7. From the top it says, and Yahweh said unto Moses, see, I have made thee a god to Pharaoh, and Aaron thy brother shall be thy prophet. So this is going to be 40 years later. Don't believe me? Let's jump down to verse 7. And Moses was 80 years old, right? And Aaron 83 years old when they spoke unto Pharaoh. So we see that this is 40 years later. Remember, 80, that would be 80 years. A score is 20 years. So 4 times 20, what is 80? Right? Okay. So now we understand. See how it didn't happen immediately, right, with Moses there. And so we brought that instance out to show you through the scriptures, right, that the Tower of Babel, that didn't happen instantly. It took time, right? Let's prove it, right? Let's prove it. Let's prove that it took time, okay? Let's go back over to the book of Genesis. Now remember, the Tower of Babel happened over in Genesis 11, right? Let's go to Genesis 12. Watch this. Watch this. If Yahweh, had confused the languages at that point, then we got a problem, right? And we're going to see that we don't have a problem. So now this is Genesis 12. From the top it says, now Yahweh said unto Abram. Yahweh hadn't even changed Abram's name yet. Hadn't even changed his name. It says, get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house unto a land that I will show thee. Right? This is Abram. Now check this out. Let's jump down to verse 18. Right? So now Abram is traveling to a distant land here. Right? A distant land. Right? And he's going to have a conversation with somebody. Look at this, right? So this is verses, let's get verses 18, 19. It says, and Pharaoh called Abram. Wait a minute, hold on for a minute. So how was Pharaoh and Abram having a conversation? And you don't see a translator there. You don't see anybody that's translating, these differences in terms of language, right? If we're going to show an instance when, you're going to have to translate, but you don't see that here. So these people are able to understand one another, right? It says, and Pharaoh called Abram and said, what is this that thou hast done unto me? Why didst thou not tell me that she was thy wife? Why saidst thou, she is my sister, so I might have taken her to be my wife? Now therefore, behold thy wife, take her and go away. So these people are having a conversation right here. So Abram understood Pharaoh, right? He understood him. Right? And we don't see a translator here translating, the languages. So apparently they understood one another. And so we're showing that, Yahweh, he didn't confound the languages immediately like that. So now the scriptures command us, we need at least 2 to 3 witnesses to righteously establish a matter, okay? So now we see Abraham having a conversation with the Egyptian, right? Watch this. Let's go to Genesis chapter 20, right? Let's go to Genesis chapter 20, all right, and get it, okay? And we're going to start at, let me see, we're going to start at Genesis 20 and 9. And we're going to see here, right? uh, when we go at the top of Genesis 20 and 1, Yahweh had changed Abraham's name. Look at this. Genesis 21, and Abraham, right? His name is Abraham now. So this is a period of time, that elapsed that Yahweh even changes Abram's name to Abraham. So we see this, right? And Abraham, he's in the land of the Philistines now. So we saw that he was speaking to an Egyptian. Now we're going to see him having a conversation. He and his wife are going to be having a conversation with the Philistine king. Watch, right? So we see, that in verse 1, Genesis 21, that Yahweh had changed Abraham's name. His name is Abraham now, okay? So now let's jump down to verse 9. Watch this. It says, and Abimelech, right, the Philistine, called Abraham and said to him, why hast thou done unto us? And what have I offended thee, that thou hast brought on me and on my kingdom a great sin? Thou hast done deeds unto me that ought not to be done. Watch this. And Abimelech said unto Abram, what sawest thou that thou hast done this thing? And Abraham said, these people are having a conversation, right? They're having a conversation. They're having a dialogue back and forth. And again, we don't see a translator here. We don't see a translator here, right? So these people are having a conversation. These people understood one another, right? And Abimelech said unto Abraham, what sawest thou that thou hast done this thing? And Abraham said, because I thought surely the fear of God is not in this place, and they will slay me for my wife's sake. And yet indeed she is my sister. She is the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother. And she became my wife. And it came to pass, when Yahweh caused me to wander from my father's house, that I said unto her, this is thy kindness which thou shalt show unto me at every place whither we shall come. Say of me, he is my brother. So everywhere they would go, you know what I'm saying, they would, say Abraham and Sarah, would say, that, that Sarah is his sister. We see that here. Look at that, right? Verse 15. And Amalek said, behold, my land is before thee, dwell where it pleased thee. Look at this. Even Sarah, watch this, on verse 16. And to Sarah he said, behold, I have given thy brother 1,000 pieces of silver, right? Exactly, right? So he's even talking, so Abimelech, he's even, talking to Sarah, he's speaking to her now. And you don't see a translator here, right? Verse 17. And Abraham prayed unto Yahweh, right? And Yahweh healed Amalek, right? We don't need all of that. But what we needed was to get the meat off the bone here. We see, the Philistine king, Abraham and Sarah having a conversation. They're having a dialogue, and these people understood one another, right? So we had to come here to prove that, right? And we don't see a translator. So these people were able to have a structured conversation here, okay? A structured conversation. We just proved that, okay? So now, let's see an instance when Yahweh is going to require a translator, right? Aaron is going to be the translator for Moses. Watch this, okay? Let's go over to Exodus chapter 4, right? So now we're going to see a translator. We didn't see translators in both of those instances with Abraham, right? When he was Abram, right? And then Abraham. We didn't see a translator there. Those people were able to understand the dialogue, that was being spoken there. They were able to understand that. So let's go to Exodus 4, and we're going to see a translator is going to be required here. Watch this. Okay. Exodus 4 and 10, it says, And Moses said unto Yahweh, O my Lord, I am not eloquent, neither therefore, nor since thou hast spoken unto thy servant, but I am slow of speech and of a slow tongue. Now Moses is saying this because, remember, he was slow in speech in Hebrew, right? He was slow in speech in Hebrew because, remember, he grew up, as an Egyptian, right? Right? Watch. 12, it says, Now therefore go, and I will be with thy mouth, and teach thee what thou shalt say. Look at that. 14, it says, okay, and the anger of Yahweh was kindled against Moses, and he said, Is not Aaron the Levite their brother? So Yahweh's going to use Aaron as a spokesman, right, to translate, right, what's being spoken, right? It says, I know that it's like it says, I know that he can speak well, and also, behold, he cometh forth to meet thee, and when he seeth thee, he will be glad in his heart. And thou shalt speak unto him, and put words in his mouth, and I will be with thy mouth, and with his mouth, and will teach you what ye shall do. And he shall be thy spokesman. See that? Translator unto the people. We didn't see, a spokesman over there with Abraham, right? Those two instances. And he shall be, he shall be to thee instead of a mouth, and thou shalt be to him instead of a God. Exactly. So we see translations going here, right? So now let's go and prove that Moses, he spoke fluent Egyptian, or whatever the heck that language was. Let's go over and prove it. Let's go to, because we just saw, that Moses mentioned, he's slow in speech. That's going to be in the Hebrew speech, right? Let's go to Acts chapter 7 again. And let's look at verse 22. Acts 7:22, it says, And Moses was learned in all wisdom of the Egyptians. See that? And was mighty in words and deeds. So this man spoke fluent Egyptian, or whatever language it was, and was well learned. But we're going to see that Moses had a faith problem. He had a faith problem, right? And so, that's one of the reasons why Yahweh uses Aaron, his brother, as a spokesman, right? Right? Right. Because we'll say, and we got to understand, if Moses speaks fluent Egyptian, how come he didn't just speak to Pharaoh by himself? Right? They understood one another. Let's see why. Right? I love this Bible. I love Yahweh Ba'asham and Yahweh Shah. Okay? Let's go to Exodus chapter 6 and see why Moses had a faith problem. Let's go to Exodus 6, and we'll start at verse 9. Exodus 6 and 9. It says, And Moses spake unto the children of Israel, but they hearkened not unto Moses for anguish of spirit and for cruel bondage. So watch this. And Yahweh spoke unto Moses, saying, Go and speak unto Pharaoh king of Egypt, right? And that he let the children of Israel go out of his land. Watch Moses' reply. In 12, it says, And Moses spoke to Yahweh, saying, Behold, the children of Israel have not hearkened unto me, right? How then shall Pharaoh hear me, who am of uncircumcised lips? So he wasn't, he didn't have the faith Moses did, right? He did not have the faith, because he said, okay, if the children of Israel, are not going to listen to me, how in the heck is this king, this royal dude, listen to me, right? See, he called himself uncircumcised lips. 13, it says, And Yahweh spoke to Moses and to Aaron, and gave them a charge unto the children of Israel, unto Pharaoh king of Egypt, to bring the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. So this is why Moses didn't have a conversation like that with Pharaoh. His faith, was wavering. So Yahweh gave him Aaron as a spokesman. So this is why, right? So, in summary, we can conclude the Tower of Babel, the languages weren't confound then, immediate like that. We saw with Abraham, okay, in a couple of instances. Can you guys imagine if, this earth was under one speech, right? Just think about it right now these days. Do you know how wicked this place, man, this place would be? You think it's wicked now. And so this is why Yahweh confounded the languages. Even today, a person from China is not going to, understand, the person from Russia, you know what I'm saying? Or the person from Portugal, right? It's not going to understand, the person, from Belize, right? So this is what it is. So, and you'll see how these languages, how they derive, right? Because in Mexico, right, the Spanish they speak is different from the Spanish they speak over in Puerto Rico. It's a different, in terms of the linguistics of it. It's different, right? Remember, so what is Spanish? So Spanish, it's another language that came out of a language. Remember, Latin, is the base language. So out of Latin, you got these dialects of Spanish, of Greek. How can a Greek dude, understand, the Hebrew dude? This is why we had, why Yahweh, he confuses the languages, right? So, we can, through the Spirit, understand exactly the Tower of Babel, how Yahweh confuses the languages, but not immediately, right? So in summary, I want to give all glory, all honor, all praises to Yahweh Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai. Shalom.